Hi guys, and hello from the hilltop. I'm Waxahachie Blue, and I want to welcome you to my channel, The Plateau Perfectionist. Today's video is my January 2023 plan with me in my new size 8/5 Archer and Olive dot journal. So my goal for 2023 is to have the entirety of the year in one journal. I am one of those that I don't particularly like to change journals mid-year. So in order to accomplish that goal, I decided to keep my monthly spreads to a relatively minimum. Each of my months will contain a quote page, title page with a Dutch door, a 2-page calendar spread, a budget tracker, because that's something I need every month, as well as my weeklies. I also wanted to keep everything looking very cohesive, so I am actually sticking to these 6 colors, and each color it's going to be a monochromatic month. And then after the first 6 months, I will reset the colors. So for this month, I am using this dark gray, and I will be doing just a little bit of doodles just here and there. But for right now, I am just setting up my quote page and my title page, which has a 3-space Dutch door on the right-hand side. So for the quote this month, this is the beginning of anything you want. I figured that was quite a fitting quote for the first month of the new year. It also kind of ties into my word for this year, which is enough, which you can also see in my setup for 2023, which was the previous video. Something I also wanted to include is I've had these stickers for a gazillion years, and they are the perfect size for the Dutch door. I have them for all 12 months, and so I will try to keep those relatively consistent throughout the year. I also used a copy of the Future Log Year at a Glance spread that I had, and I just cut out the month and put it on a sticky note and then taped it into my bullet journal, so that way I didn't have to write it all out. So as for the doodles, like I said, they're going to be monochromatic, so I went with a very simple design. This one is just based off of plants in a glass vase. I wanted to do really simple doodles just in case anybody wanted to ever recreate these kinds of doodles. They are very, very simple. You just kind of create a basic shape, add a couple of lines, and then take your marker or whatever you're using and just make little circles or dots or whatever you want to call it, and those can be the leaves, and it's very minimalist aesthetic. So fun fact, the reason I made the Dutch door 3 spaces wide is because the stickers are about 2 spaces wide once you put them down, so I had enough space for 2 lines. So when the Dutch door is completely closed, I get the 2-line aesthetic regardless of which side the page is flipped on. As for the setup for the 2-page spread, I actually mathed out the perfect size for the 2-page calendar. So each box is 5 wide by 6 long. I did that so that way the top space is enough space for the color that I'm going to be using for the month, as well as the number for the date. So technically the usable space for each of these days of the month is 5 by 5. I also included 1 line for the top line, which is the days of the week, because I always forget to do the days of the week. I'm actually how would I say this? I took a cut off from one of my other pages, one of my Dutch door pages, and I wrote out the math so that every single month I can just go back to that little cheat sheet code and can prefabricate this particular design, and it'll be in the exact same spot on every single 2-page calendar, so it's not like moving and floating all over the page. Also, since I do my months Monday to Sunday, I had the one little day here that is not quite going to fit on the page. This particular most months are 7 by 5. It's very rarely will you have one that's a 7 by 6. And in that case, I figured since the New Year's Day, aka the first day of January, was falling on a Sunday, I personally would not be all that busy. So I just took my first Sunday and cut it in half. So it's going to, I don't like doing the diagonal lines just because I lose a lot of space whenever I'm doing those. So I made it slightly, it works. It was a kind of a throwaway day because I was on holiday that day anyway, so I didn't need much space for writing anything overly important on that day, so I just put it there. So here is I'm just going to write the days. I will say I accidentally forgot to put marker all the way across this line because I was like, oh, I forgot the first, and then I also realized later on I forgot to put the line for the 6th and the 7th, which I catch as I'm filling out the numbers. So everybody makes mistakes. I did catch it, and I still think it looks great. So yeah, I kept it simple. Here is my general layout for the 2-page spread, and then I will be adding just a small doodle in the bottom corner, and that's about where we're going to go. So something that I wanted to add to this was that I did this little notch on the right-hand page. So when on the left-hand page there is the word budget, and it fits perfectly in this little notch, and on the right-hand page it says weeklies. So that way I can just kind of flip back and forth, and it gives me just a little bit of a lip for my finger to catch in order to make flipping the page slightly easier. As for the budget setup, I have it, again, I went through and mathed out how many spaces I needed for each of my columns here, and I do a rolling total style budget, so that way I can quite literally just grab the last line off of the previous month, move it to the next month, and that it just keeps rolling itself right along. Each of these columns has a different purpose. The first is the date, the second is the description of the purchase, the amount of the purchase, and then whichever account is going to be done, which one I need to use, whether it's the so I do have a couple of credit cards, hence why there's multiple columns, and this can actually be altered for either removing or adding a column. It just depends on what you need. I wanted to keep it very simple, and so that way I don't have to add much. I didn't add any doodling to the budget spread. So here are my weeklies. In order to make all of the year of 2023 fit in my bullet journal, I decided to go with these 7-day weekly spreads, I guess you could say. Long story short is I did do a single Dutch door here that splits it, and there are 7 lines on each of these pages, which gives me 8 spaces. This worked well for the first week because I had that additional Sunday for January 1st. Other than that, I just kept it simple, and I left a little space at the top of each spread, which I will be adding just a little bit of doodles towards the top just to give it a little bit of a pop of decoration. The reason I cut the Dutch doors the way I did is because I also include a habit tracker here on the left. I marked the weekends just because that just helps with my spacing for my mental abilities. And it's in order to keep track of about 5 to 6 habits, and that's how deep the Dutch door is. And then on the right side where the Dutch door, on that right page, that is where I will also track my weight, because that is something that I have a personal goal for, is to do with my personal health. So that gives me 4 weeks worth of lines. I obviously can't get the entirety of my January in there because there are a couple days at the end of January that fall into the following week in February. So those will be in my February spread. It is a personal pet peeve of mine that is that way, but it was the only way to make sure that I had enough pages, even in this Archer and Olive, which is supposed to have 192 pages. The reason I say supposed to have is because the way an Archer and Olive is glued together, some of the pages have a little bit of an indent where that glue seam is, where each stitch portion meets stitch portion. And that was a personal pet peeve of mine. I am very particular when it comes to my bullet journals, and I ended up taping those pages together so that way I didn't have to deal with that. However, when I looked through the journal and did some general math, that glue seam caused an issue, and I lost 20 pages. And by 20 pages, I mean like the front of one page is one page, the back of the page is another page, and in that total is where that 20 pages count comes from. So instead of 192 pages, I was down to 182. And that meant I had to do some cuts in how I designed my bullet journal in order to make it last for the entirety of the year. So here I have this little space at the top of each 3 out of the 4 weeks, and so I decided to just do some very simple flowers. They really are. They are like the kind you would find in a high schooler's inside edge of a spiral notebook. They're quite literally just little circle doodles and some lines, which I went back with the marker and made leaves, so it just gave a very, very subtle hint of a color. And then just some additional grass, and that's it. That was all the doodles that I did for these spreads. It's extremely minimal design, but it's very functional. And I'm not a person that likes to write an excessive amount in my bullet journal. I like to just keep a running tally of like bills that I know are due, things that I need to do for work or for personal life. And that's how I use my bullet journal. This might not work for everybody, especially if you're one of those that has a lot of tasks or you do a lot of things in your journal. But for me, someone who just tries to keep it simple and make it functional, so that way I'm not overtaxing myself trying to fill in spreads that I am never going to use, this works for me. So in the meantime, I will just let the music run. I want to thank you for watching this video and spending some time with me. I hope you enjoyed my spreads. If you like my work, I have the YouTube channel here, which I try to post monthly. I do have an Instagram, however, I have been having some issues with it, so I haven't been posting. My apologies if you are one of my Instagram followers. But in the meantime, I hope you have a great day. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next month. Bye!